Now, there are many ways to end a horror movie, but it's certainly more common in horror than any other genre for the terror to continue past the end credits. As such, we've often witnessed heroes and villains alike getting killed off in the very last scene, or, in extreme cases, even the final shot of the movie entirely. It's a tactic that can come off as a cheap and manipulative one if not executed with due care, but when it hits, well, it really hits, and that's what we're here to talk about today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 horror movie characters who died in the final shot. Number 10. Officer Trubiano, You're Next. Adam Wingard's You're Next is a film wholly concerned with toying with audiences' expectations, something that it continues to do right up until its very final shot. After survivalist Erin has killed her turncoat boyfriend Crispin, she's shot in the shoulder by a police officer, Officer Trubiano, who arrives on the scene and understandably believes her to be the murderer rather than the victim. Trubiano then calls for backup and goes to enter the property to deal with the situation, only for Erin to scream, "No, don't," realizing that he's about to inadvertently trigger a trap that she had set in order to take out the real killers. But alas, she's too late to save the poor officer, as the rigged act falls from the ceiling and speeds towards his face, before Wingard cuts to the movie's titles, which have been splashed with what is now presumably Trubiano's blood. While it's not out of the ordinary for the main killer or final girl to die in the final second of a horror movie, a basically random innocent character we've never met, well, that is utterly wild. Number 9. Krug, The Last House on the Left, 2009. The 2009 remake of The Last House on the Left may be a relatively mixed bag, but it at least delivers one unforgettably gnarly death scene in its very final shot. Just like the Wes Craven-helmed original, it concludes with the murderer-rapist Krug being brutally dismantled by Dr. John Collingwood in revenge for Krug raping and almost killing John's daughter Marie, who in fact died in the 1972 Craven version. And so the final scene sees John paralyze Krug from the neck down and place his head inside a most unexpected of offensive weapons, a broken microwave. Just as Krug comes to and starts to realize what's about to happen, John powers the microwave on and Krug's head is fast cooked. The pressure quickly causes it to explode like a baked potato that somebody forgot to poke a couple of holes in. Mere fractions of a second after Krug's head splatters the surrounding area, the director then cuts to the credits, and that's that. Number 8. Father Patrick Malone, The Fog, 1980. Death scenes don't get much more hilariously abrupt than Father Malone's last-second demise in John Carpenter's original version of The Fog. At the very end, once the fog has dissipated and the ghosts have vanished, Malone expresses surprise that he was spared by the vengeful ghost of ship owner Blake. Blake's ghost was seemingly hell-bent on murdering 6 people, representing the 6 who conspired to wreck his ship 100 years earlier, killing him and his men. Malone initially offers himself up as a sacrifice due to his mother's grand involvement in the death of Blake and his crew, though appears to have been inexplicably spared by film's end. As he ponders why he was spared and why Blake only killed 5 people in the final seconds of the film, Blake suddenly re-emerges behind Malone and, as he turns around, swings a sword at him, apparently decapitating him. At the moment of impact, however, Carpenter cuts to black and then quickly smashes to the end credits. Number 7. Maud, Saint Maud. Rose Glass's near impossibly accomplished feature debut Saint Maud boasts one of the most stunningly haunting final shots in not merely horror movie history, but cinema full stop. After troubled nurse Maud stabs her patient Amanda to death, believing her to have become demonically possessed, Maud heads to the nearby beach, douses herself in acetone, and lights a match. At this point, Glass shows us the event from Maud's own deluded, religiously devout perspective, where she grows angel wings and all the alarmed people on the beach suddenly bow down in front of her. Maud then looks up to the sky in awe before Glass abruptly cuts back to reality, where Maud is in the midst of burning to death, letting out a horrific scream before Glass mercifully cuts to black. While Maud is technically alive throughout this brief second-long shot, she's clearly not long for this world at all. By reducing her brutal death down to a short, sharp glimpse before the credits roll, well, it makes a far deeper impression. Number 6. Angela, Quarantine. Quarantine, the English-language remake of classic Spanish found-footage flick Wreck, similarly ends with news reporter protagonist Angela being dragged off into the darkness by a grotesquely mutated figure skulking around in the creepy attic apartment. Now, while Wreck received a direct sequel which confirmed that Angela in fact survived the attack, albeit while becoming temporarily infected by the viral parasite that caused the infection, her stateside equivalent wasn't quite so lucky. Despite performing decently at the box office, grossing over $40 million against a mere $12 million budget, Quarantine for some reason or another never received a straight sequel. Its only follow-up was the unrelated straight-to-video Quarantine 2 Terminal, which made no mention at all of Angela or her fate. And so, without Angela's story ever being followed up on in the US remake, we're left with no choice but to conclude that she was promptly murdered by the creature who dragged her away. Number 5. Everyone. The Cabin in the Woods. The Cabin in the Woods sees its surviving heroes press the big red apocalypse button in its final moments, sticking 2 fingers up to everyone who put them in this sorry mess in the first place. Marty and Dana learn that they've been pawns in a ritual of human sacrifices, each resembling classic horror movie scenarios intended to appease underground-dwelling deities known as the Ancient Ones. The overseer of the operation, the director, played by Sigourney Weaver, urges Dana to kill her pal Marty in order to complete the ritual and prevent the world from being destroyed by the pissed-off Ancient Ones, but ultimately, she refuses. The movie ends with both of them sharing a joint while summarizing that humanity's survival isn't worth the cost of sending people to their deaths. And so, the final shot shows one of the Ancient Ones' giant hands bursting through the earth, destroying the facility and killing the pair in the process, while implying that the entire world's population is now in the midst of being wiped out. Number 4. Gray Parker and Brother Deacon, The Borderlands. 2013's found footage flick The Borderlands might well be one of the most criminally underappreciated horror films of the last decade. It is a major credit to both found footage and low-budget genre filmmaking as a whole. Now, The Borderlands focuses on a team of Vatican investigators dispatched to deduce the nature of apparently paranormal activity reported in a 13th century church in rural Devon. Hey, that's where I was born. The situation becomes increasingly unsettling for the trio until Brother Deacon and tech expert Gray discover a hidden staircase leading to a labyrinth beneath the church. Here they find evidence of child sacrifices in the name of a pagan deity, before entering an extremely narrow, pungent-smelling passageway. When they eventually try to retreat, however, they're unable to as the tunnel starts moving and the men begin melting. The implication is that they've accidentally stumbled into the literal belly of the beast and are being dissolved by the unknown creature's digestive enzymes. In the final seconds, we're subjected to a few scattered shots of the pair being melted alive, before writer-director Elliot Goldner cuts to black. The deacon can be heard reciting the Lord's Prayer in what are presumably his and Gray's final moments of existence. Number 3. Blair Lilly, Unfriended. Screen life horror film Unfriended takes place within a Skype chat as 6 friends are terrorized by the ghost of a fellow student, Laura Barnes, who they bullied until she took her own life. At the very end of the movie, protagonist Blair is the sole surviving member of the chat, when Laura's ghost reveals that Blair was in fact the ringleader of the bullying and instigated the embarrassing incident which led her to take her own life. In the final moments, a distraught Blair hears her bedroom door creak open, after which Laura's ghost appears, slams down her laptop screen, and attacks her. The end. While we don't see Blair's death unlike her unfortunate pals, there's no ambiguity here at all considering everything we've seen up until this point. Plus, no mention is made of her in the standalone sequel Unfriended Dark Web, so it's safe to assume that Laura indeed completed her brutal quest for vengeance. Number 2. Clara and Coldo, Rec 3 Genesis. Now, Rec 3 switches up the series' formula in a number of ways. It's not actually found footage, nor does it focus on the characters featured in the first 2 films. It's also a weirdly romantic movie, centered around a pair of newlyweds, Clara and Coldo, who attempt to survive after a zombie outbreak invades their wedding reception. In the final minutes of the movie, the pair are finally reunited, but moments later, Clara is bitten by her infected grandfather. Coldo attempts to stop the infection by cutting Clara's arm off, but it sadly doesn't take. And so, when the pair are met by the police, Coldo is ordered to let go of his clearly infected bride, but instead he decides to kiss her, just as she becomes fully infected and bites his tongue off. The cops then gun the pair of them down, and as they're laying on the floor bleeding to death, they hold hands one last time. Finally, their hands stop moving, and that's all she wrote. And number 1, Johnny Smith, The Dead Zone. David Cronenberg's The Dead Zone is a terrifically entertaining sci-fi horror thriller, in which schoolteacher Johnny Smith wakes from a coma following a car accident to discover that he can see the past, present, and future of anyone he makes physical contact with. Johnny eventually realizes that politician Greg Stilson will become the President of the United States and order a nuclear strike against the USSR. And so, in an attempt to prevent this, Johnny tries to assassinate Stilson in the climax, but fails. However, amid the chaos, Stilson ends up using a baby as a human shield, an act of cowardice, which is handily photographed. Johnny is then shot and mortally wounded by Stilson's bodyguard, but in his dying moments, he's able to make brief contact with Stilson and realize that the incriminating photo will end his political career and later lead to him taking his own life. Satisfied that he's managed to avert a nuclear apocalypse, Johnny is able to die peacefully, going limp in the arms of his former lover Sarah. And Cronenberg, ever the master of concision, ends the movie at that very moment. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 horror movie characters who died in the final shot. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Instagram and Twitter, where it's at RetroJ, but the O is a 0. Hope to see you over there. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Hope you're treating yourself well with love and respect, because you deserve all the bloody best things in life, alright? And do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise, alright? You're a massive ledge, and I want you to go out there and smash it today. I believe in ya. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome,